My name is Dr. Deborah Adamy. Welcome to my podcast, Enlighten, Uplift, and Inspire. I'm so glad you're listening today. If you haven't already, please subscribe to my podcast. Take a moment to rate and review, as it helps our visibility in the Apple Podcast Store. I'll be posting a new episode every Monday, so please check your Enlighten subscription for the latest installment. I also invite you to visit my website, enlighten.nyc, where you will find more information on my background, photographs, videos, and recorded meditations. For February's Black History Month, I am featuring 4 amazing African American women: a humanitarian entrepreneur, a singer-songwriter, a songwriter, businesswoman, and mentor to new artists. And this week's guest is an award-winning filmmaker, Tracey Anarella. Tracey shares her journey starting as an undergraduate at Cornell University with the intention of going to medical school. Instead, she became a pharmaceutical researcher, then took time off to raise her children and received her MBA while going through a divorce. Tracey recently created a whole new career embracing the world of filmmaking. She delights in her relationship with Peter Fish, her true soulmate, who has inspired Tracey to jump into the mindset of loving what you do for a living. Tracey and Peter creatively collaborate on her films, traveling extensively for film shoots and festivals, as Tracey is bubbling over with ideas for new movies. Keep an eye out for my conversation with Peter Fish on a future podcast. The topics of Tracey's movies include a subway musician, inner city inspirations, black on black prejudice, a renowned musician, and the crippling impact of illiteracy. Please check out the show notes for links to Tracey's movie trailers. Enjoy the podcast. Welcome to Enlighten, stories and conversations to uplift and inspire. My guest today is Tracey Anarella, and I'm so happy you're with me today. Welcome.
Thank you, and I'm really happy to be here.
I have to smile, Tracey. I feel like this great connection to you, even though we hardly know each other. But there is something about your recent movie, Not Black Enough, that makes me feel like I know you. It is your story, isn't it? It gave me a window into your heart and soul and kind of your perspective on life. Can you describe that movie for us?
Sure. Not Black Enough it's a feature doc that I've done, and it is my story, but it's my story in that I did it from my perspective of being an African American woman. And in the Black community, we tend to have this phenomenon. People never really knew what to call it, but it's this challenge of this need to hold others back for fear of either alienation. If you move out of the neighborhood, where does that leave me? You go off and try to get an education, where does that leave me? Does that mean I have to get an education? In many different areas of our lives, of my life, I felt that I was not Black enough, or was told. I shouldn't say that I felt. I never felt that I was. I always knew I was Black
That's
enough.
a good distinction.
Okay, I always knew, and many people asked me that at Q&As after a screening. Did you ever feel you were not Black enough? I never felt that I was not Black enough, but I was told in many different ways and at many different times in my life that I was trying to be white, or I was chasing, white people, or trying to do what white people do. I spoke like I was white. I only liked white music. I only wanted to go to white vacation spots. And I didn't understand it. And as a young child, my mom, early on, I was at a playground, and I always tell Peter this story. Peter is my partner in life and also in work. He makes my films with me. I was telling him that once on the playground, there were a bunch of us playing, and we were trying to get order and trying to decide who would go first down the sliding board. And a little girl was arguing with another little girl. And I said, well, why don't we just line up, we know who was here first, and let's just try to do it. We're just trying to play here and have fun. And she said, well, you shouldn't speak because you wouldn't know anything because you can put curls in your hair. And I'm like, what? That? I can put, I didn't understand. She's like, you think you're cute. You think you're white because you can put, I said, I don't. I don't understand. And then, we continued to play, but it really bothered me. So I went home that day and I said, Mom.
As a child.
Yeah, I was maybe about 8 or 9. And I said, Mom, you have to explain something to me. I said, we were at the playground playing, and this little girl said to me that I have no right to talk to anybody on the playground or because I thought I was white because I can put curls in my hair. And I said, what's wrong with my hair? What's wrong? She's like, here we go.
The beginning of this life lesson.
She's like,
wow.
I was hoping this would never. So she explained, what this was early on.
Yeah.
And she was the one who said, there's nothing wrong with you. This is their issue. This is their insecurity. And you have to understand, honestly, this is something that you will deal with probably for the rest of your life. But you must understand that you are Black. You are Black enough. They're the ones that have the problem, and it's crippling. It's limiting.
It is
so
crippling.
You cannot allow this to stop. So that's what the film is about.
Yeah. Oh, it's so poignant, Tracey. I was a young social worker working in inner city Brooklyn, mostly with African American and Latino teenagers back in the 80s, and I can remember hearing heart-wrenching stories of kids saying that their own family members were saying that they weren't Black enough, or they were too Black, they were too dark, and there would be all sorts of alienation and ostracizing family members and I remember being in my late 20s going, really? Like, wow. So I got reminded of those stories when I saw your movie, and I feel like it is your story, but it is the story that's much larger. Clearly, the people that you included in that movie all had their own experiences of that same kind of discrimination, jealousy, pulling each other down. I don't know if I can rattle off as quickly as you can. Who were some of the amazing people that you had interviewed in your movie?
Well, we had
from the Fifth Dimension,
Florence LaRue, who was from the Fifth Dimension.
Yes.
We had Vanessa Williams, who was the former Miss America. We had Henry Louis Gates, who's a PBS anchor,
right?
And Petey Pablo, who is a rapper. Who is just brilliant. The man is a genius.
Yep.
And then we had people that I wanted everyday people and children in the film to give a huge spectrum of experiences. But I also had people from different nationalities come in and tell what's
the joke,
the crab joke.
Brazilian, Portuguese, Puerto Rican, Spanish, Hindi.
Tagalog from my friend's mom, who's from the Philippines. Because what I was trying to show is, I told a story from my perspective, and I'm a Black woman, but this is a human issue.
It is,
and that was what I was trying to show with the crab joke. And what's interesting was, I think in Portuguese, the people from Brazil, they call them. Some people call them crabs, some people call them lobsters, and so it was different for different cultures.
But it's a universal joke.
It's a universal joke.
So give the essence of the joke.
The joke goes, two fishermen are going out for a good catch of the day. They come back and they realize we've had a great catch for today, better than we've had in a long time. So one fisherman says to the other one, you know what, we owe ourselves a beer. So let's just go out for a beer before we go home and, call it a day. And the other one says, well, no, we can't do that. We've got this great catch, but we've got no lid for the top of our pot. We'll lose our catch of the day. Look at all the hard work. He goes, don't even worry about those lobsters, because those are, whether it's Brazilian or whatever, those are Puerto Rican lobsters. Once the top ones try to climb out, the bottom ones will pull them back down, so you'll never lose any of them. So that's the joke, and it's just changed a little bit depending on the culture.
Wow. It's amazing. I think that was such a sweet way that you wove it into the movie, because it got told from all these different languages, and that it became much more of a universal tendency we have. It reminds me of the Marianne Williamson quote that Mandela used for his inaugural speech about it's not our smallness that worries us or that we're afraid of. It's that it's our light, that we are powerful beyond measure. That's what scares us more.
Right.
As if shrinking is going to serve anybody.
Right.
But not being in our light. And so as you talk about just why wouldn't any other African American say, you go, girl.
Exactly.
Go for that education. Go for that creativity. But it does something to others that's threatening.
Right. That's what it is. It's you feel threatened. As I said, if you do that, well, where does that leave me? Or does that mean I have to do that? Does that mean there's something wrong with me that you've chosen to go off to college? You've chosen to study hard. You've chosen to keep pulling yourself up. But does that mean I have? And that's no one's doing that. That's your own insecurity.
Exactly.
So,
but it's not an excuse for us not to be shining our own light.
Exactly.
Wow. I as a therapist, I've heard story after story of that kind of experience happening, just even sometimes within families. You know, one family member takes it to the next level and the other family members are threatened, hurt, jealous. It's really interesting. So
and that carries into adulthood.
And it does carry into adulthood. Because then you think, you feel guilty for succeeding or thriving.
On both sides, the one who's very successful feels bad because the parents are like, well, why, Johnny went off to Harvard and Johnny became the doctor, and but you just, that word just.
Yes.
So.
Which knocks it down.
Right.
Anyway, I can't speak highly enough of your movie.
Thank you.
Because I think, so I'm hoping all of our listeners, and they can download it on Amazon.
It's on Amazon Prime. And please, if you get a chance, it's very hard because you don't see it there. If you can rate it and review it in that way, Amazon will keep it as one of their top Black documentaries.
Yeah,
so.
I think it's a really important movie. So, but that's how I learned of you. Even though we physically met just recently, I felt like you gave me a window into your heart and soul through that movie and dared to put an important message out there about let's challenge each other. Let's take a look at this. Let's have these important dialogues. But there's so much more to you that I want to learn about, Tracey. So give me your background. How did you get into film? Where did that start for you?
That wasn't how I started off. I've only been doing this for, I'll be 55 in 2 weeks. I've been doing it for 5 years now.
Oh, wow.
And because my background is science. I grew up in Cleveland, Ohio, and went off to college and went to Cornell, and I was a bio major. And I was pre-med, and at that time, I applied to medical school, didn't get in on my first shot after school, after graduating from school. And, my parents, like a lot of people some people don't get in the second time, some did in the third time, but you just keep trying. But it was really a blow to me, because I did well in school. I'm like, but there's something wrong with me. I didn't get in, and I didn't reapply. So I worked in in the sciences after I graduated. Didn't apply to medical school, reapply to medical school. So then I got into pharmaceuticals. It was tough because then I'm just like, well, where am I going to use this bio major?
Right.
And
what were the options?
It's tough. Either you teach. In the sciences, you become a doctor or you go into research. And I wasn't happy with, because I really should have reapplied. I really should have gone into medical school, but I didn't. And then I did pharmaceutical sales, and then I got married and I had my children, and I stopped pharmaceuticals and stayed home for a while. But I stayed out of the workforce a bit too long. Not too long. I'm glad I stayed home with my kids. I wouldn't have traded that time for anything. But it was hard for me to get back into the workforce once they were a certain age and I felt it was time to go back to work. So I went back to school. I went and got my MBA because I thought, well, I go in marketing. I'll go back and do that. So I did. I went to Fordham, got my MBA, went through divorce. So I had all this going on at one time.
That's a lot. And the kids were teenagers by then?
The kids were like 13 and 11, around that age.
When you were going back to school, going through the divorce,
doing all that, and
big changes.
They were great. It was a lot of big. It was hard, but we all stuck together. I was there for them, and I met this wonderful man, Peter, who was very supportive, and he got along well with the kids, and that was helpful. And then I liked what he did for a living. He's a composer, and I liked that he wrote music for television and for film. And I just loved that whole business.
Wow.
But the problem was I wanted to do something in that business, but I had no skills. And he said, honey, you did sciences, you were in research and nuclear medicine. He goes, this stuff, you can do this.
You could learn this on the job training.
He's like, come on. And I said, but I don't have any skills. And he's like, well, get a skill. Well, so I learned how to edit. And so I started editing. But then I didn't want to be an editor. I wanted to learn how to make my own films and edit my films. And that's what took me. So I took a little workshop on making documentary films where they show you how to shoot, lighting, sound, everything. And I did a project, which was for this workshop. And that project is what got me into this whole thing. And it was well received and got into like 25 festivals. It was the one that's called...
Which one?
It's called Jesse and the Fountain of Youth.
Oh.
About a busker, a young man who has a divorce, has a tough life, a tough situation in his life, leaves Oklahoma, sells everything, comes to New York, and becomes a busker, which is a street musician, and he sings for his food, his rent, everything, and was kind of sleeping on people's couches and on people's floors, but was an amazing singer and songwriter. So I did this short doc on him, and that's what started everything.
Wow. So. And how did you meet him to make that happen?
Well, we lived in Williamsburg at the time.
Brooklyn.
In Brooklyn. And we had, Peter and I had a studio together on 45th in the city, 45th and 10th.
Uh-huh.
And so sometimes Peter might go in a little earlier. Most times we would go to the studio together. But this one day, I stayed back. I don't know, I was doing something at the school with the kids, and he went ahead earlier. And he said, I know you're thinking of trying to find a topic for this final project that you have to do. I heard this guy singing in the subway, just an amazing voice and lyrics. He said, you should just talk to him. And, he might be an interesting subject for a short doc for you. Because I had to do a 15 minute and under documentary.
Wow.
So sure enough, and when I got there, he was still singing, and I approached him. He's like 6'3", very big guy, but just it sings like a bird, and the beautiful lyrics, just as Peter had described, and it was just how it was. So I approached him and I said, explained what I was trying to do and how I wanted. And he said, sure, let's do it.
Totally open.
And he was totally
Stranger.
open to it.
Wow.
Yep. And so, Peter and I, that was the crew.
That was it.
We were the sound guy, we were the lighting guy, we were everything.
What a collaboration!
And I'm telling you, it was in about 27 festivals. It won like 9 Best Short Doc.
And this was for an assignment,
right?
And look what opened up: Jesse and the Fountain of Youth.
And the Fountain of Youth.
Oh, good. I feel like I'm going to just now follow every movie that you've made.
Yeah.
This is wonderful. You know what you're reminding me of too, Tracey, as you say that? Our son in high school was considering looking into colleges for filmmaking. And a friend of ours who was a filmmaker had made a couple of documentaries, but had done a lot of freelance creative things. I had asked him for some advice because I didn't know about filmmaking. I didn't know schools that would be good for that. And I asked him, where would you recommend that our son look into or apply for filmmaking? He said, I would recommend that he not go to school for filmmaking. And I said, well, what do you mean? And he said, I think I would recommend that he goes to a great liberal arts school, studies history, philosophy, psychology, literature, science, anything but film.
I agree.
So that he is exposed to humanity and has a story to tell. He said filmmakers could learn filmmaking skills pretty quickly.
He's absolutely right.
And of course, my son wasn't ready to hear that. I thought it was brilliant. I thought it made all the sense in the world. And that's okay. My son ended up going to school for filmmaking, and he's now really finding passion as a photographer. But I think that there's some wisdom in what he said. And it sounds like you were not there as a filmmaker. You didn't go to school for that, but you had lived life and you had experienced life, and all of a sudden you had stories you wanted to tell.
Right.
And so you took the workshops or the on-the-job training kind of exposure.
Or as I call it, YouTube University. It's like, if there's something I don't get, I'm like, well, let me go on YouTube. There's got to be a way to teach me.
And look what you've learned.
And I figure out green screen. I'm like, I don't know how to do that. And I'll just give myself a little tutorial. I mean, I'm not trying to minimize these, because I know there are people that this is what they do, have done all their lives. But sometimes that's all I have, and I'll study it.
That's right.
For a good couple of hours.
Right.
I'm like, okay, I've learned enough. I think I can do this, and then over time, I just perfect
you learn
it.
as you go.
Right.
You learn as you go, and what's more important is not so much the technical, but what's the story I'm telling?
Right.
So, and I think particularly documentary filmmaking is really about the essence of the story.
Right.
So that's so exciting to me. It's kind of like you lived into that wisdom that I heard years ago from somebody. It's like, if I want to learn it, it's personally relevant to me, I'm going to learn it. And you did.
And what's funny, while I was taking the class, the gentleman who taught the class, and it was a special workshop where they only allowed 6 people in the class, and you had to be a minority to take the class, because it was a workshop that was started 30 years ago because an Asian woman felt that minorities were not given enough of a chance to get into documentary filmmaking. So she started this years ago.
Wow.
And they would only you could only be a minority to get into this program. And so the gentleman who taught never really took much of a liking to me. I just bothered him. I don't know what. I think because the nature, Peter figured this out, the nature of my film was not, it didn't have enough of a ethnic slant to it. Okay. This guy's a white guy. It's
a human story.
Yeah. So when I finished the film,
it wasn't black enough.
It wasn't black enough, and nor was I.
Oh, wow.
So when I showed him the final film, and Peter was so excited when he picked me up from class after that. He said, so how did it go? So he looked at the guy, watched the film, everybody in the class was there, and they're like, wow, that was really, he goes, no, it wasn't. It was not good. No one's going to watch this. It's really not a good movie. And all you did was pick a story about some white guy who's down on his luck, blah, 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 blah. No one's going to watch your film. It's really not that good.
Oh.
So I said, but it's okay. I said, okay, that's your opinion. So I said nothing more. And even the people in the class.
It's almost like your mom's words from when you were a child. That's his issue.
Those are his issue. And I knew that. And I kept saying to Peter, he doesn't like me. So in my head, as he's saying this, it's almost like Charlie Brown's teacher. The more he spoke, the more I was like, rah, rah, rah. I'm like, ah. So I got into the car, and Peter said, he goes, because Peter watched it, and he knows, and this is what this man has done all these years. He goes, tell me, how did it go? I said, well, he said it was a piece of poop. He goes, you're not going to stop, right? I go, please. I didn't listen to him. He goes, really? I said, Peter, he's one man who critiqued my film. I don't care what he thinks. I know I did a good film, and I'm going to keep doing this. So I don't care what he said. He goes, okay, because
what a relief!
What a relief!
Wow.
So, yeah.
Oh, this is so powerful. Look at the common thread here. Yep. That man was kind of saying you weren't black enough, and the film wasn't black enough.
Right. And it's funny that you say that. I never thought about that until right now. But you're right. Wow. That's what it was. My film wasn't black enough, and nor was I. I had no right to be there.
My goodness. Okay. And so your mom's wisdom, which is that's their issue. You are who you are, be who you are.
Right.
Beautiful. And then after Jesse.
So, but the problem is when you've done something that's successful, it's always like, I have to do this again.
And how do I do it at that level?
Can I? So again, Peter's like, you did it once, do it again. So both he and I were working on a project with the Discovery Network, and there was this an organization of band members from Crown Heights, and it was called Brooklyn United is the name of the organization. And this gentleman had at the time, I think there were maybe 100 members from age 8 up to about 20 years of age of band members. And a lot of these kids have had some tough, homeless. Some of them were in gangs, and he would help them, teach them all the different instruments and being a band, being part of a community, being part of a he worked with them. Helped them with after school. They each took care of each other. So I was really taken by the cohesiveness of this group of these kids and how he controlled them and how they respected him. So I said, I'd like to do a doc on you. And he said, all right, sure. Well, funny thing was, and we did the doc, and I kept saying to Peter, it's good, but it's like a fluff piece because it's all just, there's no conflict in here. And there's something, and we were asking a question, and we needed to ask the guy who had hired them for the project for us for this Discovery Network. So the guy, Peter was talking, and the guy said, you might not want to use this guy for your documentary. He said, Google him. Now, that's my fault. I didn't do my due diligence. I was so excited about this doc that I didn't dig into him enough. And there was a scandal where he had a relationship with a younger, she was 17, and he was like 29, like almost 30, old enough to know he was wrong.
Right.
And he didn't force himself, he didn't force it, she pushed it, but she was still underage.
Right.
So it's, it was against the law. So they took the organization away from him, ended everything. Long story short, I called him and I said, you didn't tell me this when I was interviewing you for the film. I said, now I'll bring you back in here. I said, I'm just going to throw this film away. But if you will tell me that whole story and tell me the truth, I'm going to put it in the film. He goes, you know what? I've never done this with anybody, and no one has ever made me do that. I'll do it.
Wow.
Anything you ask me, I will answer your question truthfully, and you can put it in the documentary. And he cried on film. He told the truth, and that's the film that got into the Cannes Short Corner. So
what's the name of that one, Tracey?
It's called Brooklyn United.
Oh, Brooklyn United.
Yeah.
Wow. There was your conflict.
Yeah.
You were looking for, I keep thinking of when you say the conflict of Joseph Campbell's work, The Hero's Journey. And I know so many, George Lucas and all the Disney films were, using the hero's journey, charting that course. But separate from all of that, it sounds like that's just a human. It's like, what are the battle,
right.
The beasts that we're battling? What are the dragons we're needing to slay for that real self-transformation?
Exactly.
And healing to happen. And actually you inviting him back to be truthful allowed him to have his own hero's journey.
And he says that in the film. At the end of the film, he said, I had to go through something to get to where I am today.
Exactly.
And that just said it all, the whole piece.
Brooklyn United.
Yeah.
All right. So listeners, you've got Jesse
and the Fountain of Youth, because that's the name of the song.
Not Black Enough, and Brooklyn United.
Right.
We've got more, right?
Right, yeah.
So what happened after Brooklyn United?
So after Brooklyn United, the order of the films is, it was first Fountain of Youth, then Brooklyn United, and that's when it was time for me to make a feature. And that's when I shut down. I'm like, I can't. There's no way. I can't make a feature. And again, Peter pops up. You did it once. You did it twice. So that's 20 minutes. And because they're like 10 minutes, 11 minutes.
Right.
He goes, so just put 8 different shorts together. Do it like that. Just make 8 little shorts and make it into
manageable
one movie.
steps.
Right.
Listen to the way he's coaching you.
Right.
I love it.
He's like, just go in there and do it. And I'm like, I can't. So one day I went in there. I go, you're right. Do you know I knocked out, I edited 20 minutes today. I've got 20 minutes of it. He goes, see, I told you now. He goes, go back in there and give me 40 minutes. And then before you knew it, I had a movie that was 80. It was much longer, and then you do your editing. But I had an 83-minute. I'm like, I did it.
And that's not black enough.
Not black enough. So that was my first feature.
And you and Peter, that was true collaboration, wasn't it? In terms of the music and the sound. Tell about that collaboration.
He wrote the themes, or he wrote the score to Not Black Enough. And
Marlon Saunders.
Marlon Saunders is his name. Yeah,
sings.
Marlon is, he's a vocal trainer, and he's a backup singer for Stevie Wonder, Sam Smith.
Stevie Wonder.
He's everywhere, and he also trains some of the greatest people out there. So Marlon and Peter collaborated on some of the lyrics, and then Peter wrote the song, the music for it. And a lot of the music in Not Black Enough is Peter's music as well. And Petey Pablo has a rap song. I called him because Peter knows someone who knew Petey, and he said, all right, I'll do a song for her, and I'll even interview her. So I thought he was going to call me back maybe 2 weeks later. In an hour, he goes, all right, Trace, listen. He plays his song. I said, you just did this? He goes, yeah, you said you needed it, so I wrote it right now. And I just went to the studio. I said, it's more of the black-white racism. I said, that's not what my film is about. He goes, oh, okay, I'm sorry. So I thought maybe he'd call back. 10 minutes later, he goes, listen to this. I go, you're like 90% there. He goes, all right, I'll call you back. Oh! Call back. And that's the song that's
supposed to be.
Supposed to be. Right.
Supposed to be.
Supposed to be.
Oh, it's amazing.
And he said, you can have this. Use it. And the lyrics are basically, I'm as black as I'm supposed to be.
That's it.
And, he says other things that are...
Yeah, no, that really resonated for me as he was speaking. Oh, wow. So that was a true collaboration with you and Peter.
Yes.
The music, the connections, the ideas, the coaching.
I taught Peter how to do second camera so that way he can do pickup shots for me. He already knows editing, but I taught him, the keystrokes and different things about Final Cut. So he and I will edit together. So he's very good at, because I'm that kind of person, like, isn't that a beautiful shot? I can't throw that shot away. And he's like, but it has nothing to do with the scene. He's like, it's good, but it's too long. So he knows how to go in and kind of, if I have editing, he'll go in and re-edit it or he'll change things. So, I mean, we work together from start to finish on everything.
I love it.
Of the film.
There's that it just feels collaborative, not just with the interviews that you have and the conversations with the women around the living room and the children in the living room. Those are the Brooklyn United kids. Oh, that's where I've seen that.
Because I asked him, I said, could you please give me a good cross section of your kids? I need like an 8-year-old up to about 15 because I don't want them all to be the same age. And I basically wanted them, how kids talk over each other and they'll...
Totally.
But I wanted it to be that way. I mean, I still would try to get, my points across. But they're bright kids. But I wanted it to be, that way where they're just, oh, you talk. No, my turn. And that's how...
Oh, it's so natural. So natural. That one girl...
Elaney.
Who's the actress who was so teary?
Yeah, Elaney Bass. Yeah.
Oh.
Everyone. That's the one that grabs everybody. Everybody, because
she wears her heart on her sleeves. It's just and I feel like she almost had she was holding the collective pain.
Yeah.
Not just her own. It was very real, very poignant. Okay, so that movie came after Brooklyn United.
Right.
And then the next one?
So the next one is called Livingston Taylor, Life is Good. And for those of you who may not know Livingston, he's James Taylor's younger brother. And how that movie came about, we didn't set out to do that film. There was another film that I want to talk too much about because we're probably going to do that, but there's still a lot of work we have to do on that to get to that movie.
Okay.
And we were in the process of trying to do that film. And Livingston was not very happy with that topic and didn't like that we were doing that and didn't want to be involved in that. Was really very upset with us in the phone call. And he said, and once he calmed down, and because being a Midwesterner, I had this way of like, okay, it's like, let's calm down. It's not the end of the world.
I can meet him where he is.
Yeah. And so I said, live. So calm. I get it. You don't have to make that. He goes, but you know what? I'm sorry I got a little upset, but why don't you do a movie about my teachings at Berkeley? And I thought to myself, okay, well, I don't know much I haven't been in your class. I mean, I've heard about what you do, but I don't know much about it. He goes, well, come to Boston and watch me teach and see if you want to do a documentary about that. So, every Wednesday for like a couple of months, Peter and I would drive to Boston and go to his, I think it was like 10:30 class. And we would get there in time and shoot both cameras and set up with the soundboard in the back of the room and shoot his class.
Oh.
Well, for me, and I said to Peter one day, we were driving back from Boston, he goes, you seem kind of down. I go, well, it's not that I'm down, but I don't want to do this film. He goes, you don't like it? I said, it's not that I don't like it, but it's boring. And I don't mean his teachings are boring, because there's nothing boring about Livingston Taylor. One of the brightest men.
Animated,
talented. I mean, this guy is, I always say he's like a kaleidoscope. You know how when you turn a kaleidoscope and it's got all those different, that's Livingston. You never know what's going to happen next with him. But I said, if I am bored at editing and shooting class after class after class, and it's called stage performance, which is what he teaches, which is very important because he teaches you about how to invest your money, how to approach the stage, how to look at your audience, how to use your hands, how to the eye-to-eye contact with you and maybe an audience, things that you think you know, but you don't know, and you need to be taught in order to be a great musician or artist on the
Performer,
stage.
yeah.
Performer. So anyway, I said, Peter, he goes, well, what would change that? What are you missing? I said, people, I want to know more about him outside of the classroom. I know he lives on Martha's Vineyard. I want to know what his life is like when he's at his house in the vineyard. I want to know, what does he do in his airplane? I heard he flies airplanes. I want to meet his other family members. I'm not saying I'll stay away from James, but
JT is off limits.
I don't need JT. He's got other family members. I want to hear their story and how they feel about Liv, because everyone knows Liv. Everybody loves Liv. I said, but that's what I need. Otherwise, I don't want to do this film. It's boring to me, so therefore it'll be boring to my audience.
Wow.
Well, and so Peter is good at. He's that guy who goes, I say, do this, and then he'll go off and talk to the person. He said, he spoke to Liv, and Liv goes, yeah, that makes sense. So Liv was, opened up his life to us, and we spent time with him on the vineyard. We interviewed Carly Simon. We interviewed Ben Taylor, Sally Taylor, who were the children that she had with James Taylor. Kate Taylor, who's Livingston's sister. Isaac Taylor, who is his nephew from his son, his brother Hugh. So we got that family part. They sang songs. They sang. Carly didn't sing, but Ben and his girlfriend sing in the film.
This is the heart and soul that you infused into it. You had an intuitive sense that his classroom lessons weren't as important as life lessons.
Right.
So you needed the fullness of who he was as a person.
Exactly. And
wow.
And I was happy that he allowed us to do this because, being in the classroom
it's a piece of it.
It's a piece of it.
But it wasn't the whole.
Right. And I needed those other pieces to show the whole. In his head, I think the teachings are so important to him that he thinks that's the full picture, and it's not.
No.
So, and he loves the film.
And it's called Livingston Taylor, Life is Good.
Right, because that's a song. He did do a song back in, I want to say like early 80s. Mm-hmm. I'm not really good at remembering lyrics, but if you're proud of what you do, life is good. And basically what I am doing now, do what you love. And if you have passion for it and you give it your all, life is good.
Life is good.
Yeah.
I've said this in other conversations, but one of my favorite quotes is, it says, "Don't ask what the world needs, rather ask yourself what makes you come alive, and then go do it. Because what the world needs is people who have come alive." So that's life is good to me.
Right.
It's like, what's making you come alive?
Right.
And Tracey, as you speak about these films and even honoring your intuition, like Livingston Taylor's letting us into the classroom. Wouldn't that be great? But it's not making me feel alive.
Yeah.
I need to feel connected, a heart and soul connection to this man as a whole man, not just as a teacher or an educator. So it's like, what's making you come alive is what's
it's what I infuse into my
your films.
Yeah.
It's what you infuse into life. Your children, your relationships, your films. It's
I try.
Yeah, no, I feel that already. It's like, what's making you come alive? And honoring that when that intuitive GPS is saying it's kind of off, like there's some wisdom there because it's not alive enough.
Right.
Oh, that's wonderful. I told you right before we started the recording that I had one experience of seeing, two. One in high school. Livingston Taylor came to Mamaroneck High School back in the 70s and performed, and I saw him live then. And then maybe in 1975 or 76 at Amazing Grace in Evanston, Illinois, outside of Chicago, in a tiny little room. And I still have such a visual, tangible memory of watching Livingston Taylor perform. Animated, facial expressions, and like you're saying, as he's talking about performance, like he connected with me and the audience to make you feel like he was singing.
You're the only person in the room.
That you're the only person in the room. I can still remember that. So he did that very naturally and intuitively. If this is what he's teaching now, I was a witness. I witnessed that. It was
and he
really,
still does it to this day.
I bet.
And that's how he handles his classroom too. I mean, it's everything about Liv is that way. He hasn't changed.
Great. And is that also available Amazon?
No,
Prime?
that not yet. That's in the beginning stages because I just finished editing that in November. So we're right at the beginning stages of the whole festival run now.
Great.
And so we're going to have a soft screening with just like cast and crew in February, and then we're going to figure out from there where screenings start. But once you start doing the whole film festival run, you have to be careful because you got to be careful where you screen it, how you screen it, because you can be disqualified with certain festivals. So.
And then what's the distribution for documentary films? I mean, is there?
It's tough. I mean, but I do have distribution for Not Black Enough, and actually for with a company that deals with shorts. But it's very hard for shorts. Features you can get more people to pick up, but documentaries are tough.
I bet.
But I was able to secure it, and it's and I was so pleased. Just this weekend, I got the first you get your little third quarter, check that shows that payment, right? Payment
residual,
right? I'm like, my films are making money, and that isn't really why I set out to do this, but to see, the fruits of your labor. You're like, wow, it does work that way. I didn't think it would, but it is.
And that's for Not Black Enough?
That was for Not Black Enough.
And because it's being shown in...
they have, I don't know, I forget which, I think that's through Amazon because of all the viewings of people that are buying it. And they're also buying it on my website, so that's doing well. But because you can purchase the DVD off of TraceyAnarella.com.
Great. Well,
but I think that was through Amazon Prime that people are viewing it.
Exciting.
Yeah.
Exciting. Yeah, I always wondered, I have a friend who made a documentary, and I remembered she got distribution in AMC movie theaters for a 2-week period or a 1-week period of time, and then it just kind of disappears. But there was that sounded like a great thing. It was because of some festival she won, but there was no publicity. There was nobody even knew that it was there. And I would tell people, my sister in San Francisco, go see it. She'd show up and there were 3 people in the theater. And It's like, so is it really a gift to have AMC running it when nobody's even listing it or pushing it, or how do you even do that? So that documentary world is
it's very hard, and even documentaries at film festivals. Like a lot of people will say, "Oh, I'm going to go see this narrative about this love story, this rom-com. I'm going to see." But the documentaries, Peter and I are like sometimes the only people in the audience. I'm like, I've seen this movie 500 times. Where are there are no audience members.
I feel that way.
But you get used to it. But what helped with Not Black Enough, the title drew people to that film. So it wasn't as hard for, Brooklyn United and Jesse and the Fountain of Youth were shorts. So shorts sometimes you get lucky because you're sandwiched in between features, and that's how they program it. But Not Black Enough's title drew people to the screenings. So good. That was a plus.
Good. You had mentioned it earlier from that course that you took that was started by an Asian woman for giving a voice for documentaries or shorts to be made by a diverse group of filmmakers. I think we follow Michael Moore on Instagram, and there was a poster, little tiny headshots of who won Best Director over the last 100 years, and there was only one female. And this was when he was just making a statement about the Harvey Weinsteins needing to be brought down and the amount of abuse that goes on in the film industry. And every other photograph, 99 photographs of white men. And so he he was also propping up that this year alone, with Jordan Peele making Get Out and the woman who filmed Lady Bird, the director, Greta Gerwig.
Right.
Greta Gerwig. And he was, and I think even Three Billboards was by an Irish man. Anyway, Michael Moore was just trying to shed light on, we need more women, we need more people of different ethnicities, we need to kind of shake up this old paradigm. So I can see how that Asian woman who started this course was really wanting to promote that.
30 years ago, and you see where we are today. Yeah,
she started that 30 years ago.
And still there
are. Okay. We got a lot of work to do. We got a lot of work to do.
Yeah.
So Livingston Taylor, Life is Good, is in the process of completing. You've just completed the editing, and
that's now in the festival
run. Okay,
so,
that's a whole different
and
before
hopefully
it's out to the public.
Hopefully, the company that has picked up Not Black Enough will pick up Livingston, and then it too will have distribution and will be on Amazon Prime. So then people can view it as well. So
great.
But I guess you have to wait a little bit with the let that kind of settle with the festivals first.
Great.
To kind of see where we are with that.
Did you have a screening for Not Black Enough?
We did like cast and crew type screening here, and then I've done it at universities. A lot of
I was going to say college campuses.
College campuses pick it up, and then that was an interesting story. I'll try to make it short, but that's actually led me into what will soon be another film that another doc I'm getting ready to work on. It was at in Waco, Texas, at Baylor University. So the head of development asked me to come and do a screening right before Martin Luther King's birthday last year. Mm-hmm. And she said, what we're trying to do is, because of race relations, and there are a lot of problems here in Waco, Texas, we're going to screen your movie with the Black Student Union, and then have people from the community come, predominantly white people, because there are not that many black people in Waco, Texas that live there. If they're there, it's because of the university. There are students who live around there, but very few black people live there. I said, all right, whatever, I'll come. So I went, and they had a young woman from the Black Student Union, moderate the whole Q&A. The place was packed. There were like 200 people in this auditorium.
Oh, that's great! What a turnout!
And they did it off-site. It was in a theater on Main Street. Uh-huh. And so the questions you could see first. They were asking a few questions about the film, and this person said this. So how did you get them to say that? Or then it shifted gears into the black on white racism. And then students started getting in arguments with white members of the community who were getting nasty. And it was
dear. This is at the Q&A?
It was at the Q&A.
Oh, Tracey.
It was horrible. People were screaming at each other. And I mean, I was very calm because I was thinking to myself, wow, my film has done this.
Look, it's stirring the pot.
Right.
Wow.
So the woman who was head of development was in the, what do you call the
booth?
The audio, the AV booth up in the top. She came flying down the aisle. I mean, this is a big, huge, old theater. And she's screaming. She's like, stop it. Stop it. And she goes, give me the mic. And so I hand her the mic, and she goes, stop it. She goes, this is what's wrong in this country. And she's like, did you even watch this movie? I mean, she went off. And so, and she tried to stop it, but even they started talking over her. But then she calmed everybody down. They had a few questions. There were a bunch of people who were Trumpsters. And there was one guy I said, sir, I see where we're going with this. Okay. And you have to understand something. I'm not like anybody else. I know you're a Trumpster. I am not. And I know where you're going with this question, and I'm not here to do that. I said, because if I start, you and I are going to have a problem. I said, so I'm not even going to answer. I am not going to address it. I'm not going to answer it.
Wow.
We're done. I said, because I know where you're going, and I don't want to go there. This is not about that. It's about my film. So I'm not talking to you. I'm not answering your question. So the whole audience started clapping.
God.
And then that just stopped it. And then everybody calmed down. And then after it ended, a white guy came up to me. He said, "Ma'am, I'm from Waco," and he goes, "And I'm a redneck," and I'm like, "Oh, okay, all right, but where are we going with this?"
Hi, nice to meet you, redneck. Is that how you introduce yourself?
Yeah, I go, "Why are you telling me this?" He said, "I'm telling you this because I listened." There were 4 girls who approached me and said, "In your film, you talked about the N-word and how it's wrong that we use it and how we use it and how we're desensitized to how
often it's used. Yeah.
Often it's used." And he said, "I'm a redneck and I grew up in this town." He goes, "And if you were to stay here a little bit longer and go down to town hall, you'll see the plaque." And he said, "There were more lynchings here between 1891 to like 1922.
Oh my God.
There were like, I forget how many lynchings a year." He goes, "Largest amount of lynchings were done here." And he was talking to these young girls. He goes, "And you've brought this film." He goes, "And you need to have films like this. And you young people need to understand." He goes, I'm a redneck." And he goes, "And I've seen it all." And he goes, "You don't know he goes, "How could you?" So he was, trying to get these girls to understand what they were saying. This is a white man from Waco. And he goes, "And those people in the audience," he goes, "you handled that Trump guy." He goes, "I know that man. They shouldn't have had him in the audience." He goes, "But you shut him down." He goes, "Nobody shuts him down." He said, "But you shut him down." He goes to every event and starts problems. And he goes, "He's racist. He hates black people. He hates all different religions. He's horrible."
Wow.
So I left there and I was telling Peter about this experience. He goes, "That's your next movie." And I'm like, what's my next movie? He goes, "N."
And yet this redneck,
who called himself, but he was the good guy. He was the guy who was trying to turn things around because he's lived there all his life. And then he goes, "And you've got to meet my friend. She's like the lesbian gay woman who comes in and tries to turn all that around. And she's been thrown in jail because she's from Brooklyn, New York. She's lesbian and she's trying to change." I'm like, "Well, you guys are a documentary yourselves." So those two were like, you got it. They were the ones who talked to me about the lynching tree and the plaque. He goes, "Did you?" And I said, "I did not know that." He goes, "Yes, this is the largest amount of lynchings were done in that town."
Incredible.
They lynched, and there's a tree, and there are pictures. And I Googled it, and I saw what he was. I mean, it's bad. It's really
frightening.
bad. But I think they took the tree down, but the plaque is there. And he said people kept, and this woman his friend who he said, "You've got to meet my lesbian friend." He's like, she's been one of the people fighting to get the plaque taken away. Now, maybe she said because what you're doing is you're kind of glorifying this.
Well, it's like the statues,
right? And it's the same
statues.
thing. Talking about the word "N," and it's not a big deal. And it's like if she said, one girl said, "Well, my friend is fat, so she just makes fat jokes, so therefore it doesn't hurt so much." I said, "But she can lose weight. I can't change the color of my skin."
Exactly.
So I'm sorry, those are not the same thing.
And the emotional charge behind that word.
Right.
I love this story too about, you never know when you make a movie because you're feeling alive and it's part of your story and you're speaking about it, the ripple effect it's going to have on other people. And this one story you're telling, look at the different backgrounds and people who got stirred up.
Right.
And what it's doing to have them hold a mirror up to themselves. Amazing. And now, of course, another movie is going to be created because of it. You could call it The Redneck.
Right.
Or something. It's
Right.
just, it's powerful. Like the person you'd least expect to be kind of a harmonizer of trying to bring people together and give the context and the history to the community. He was really wanting to connect with you.
Yeah, he and I never got his name, but that's easy because I think the woman who I connected with from Baylor, she knows him, so I would be able to get in contact with this guy. But we probably go back there because I'd like this would be a large part of
Incredible.
N.
And just call it N. Mm-hmm. Wow. The movies that I've seen just this year alone, I Am Not Your Negro. Was it 13 or 13?
13, yeah.
13. Not Black Enough. It's like, oh my goodness. Just as Harvey Weinstein and all the misogyny and all the men are just kind of falling down, this old paradigm is shifting.
Exactly.
And more movies and more stories are being told to shake things up for consciousness raising, for awareness, hopefully to really instill some responsibility once you have the awareness. But I'm so glad that your movie is part of that too. And the next one. You mentioned something before we were recording about your work with the Brooklyn Public Library and how that led to some of your interest in helping with literacy. Can you tell me more about that?
What really happened was I wanted to do a documentary on a boxer. Well, I've always loved stories about boxers. And I kind of did my own little research and found a guy that lived on the Upper West Side who was a Golden Glove champion back in the 80s. And I didn't know at the time that this was a problem for him, but I knew he was down and out on his, he had served some time in prison for drugs and things like that. But it wasn't until I kept sending him email messages and text messages that he wouldn't respond. So finally, I called him on the phone and I said, Michael, I'm trying to set some interviews up and set some things up with you, but you never respond. He said, I don't know how to tell you this, but I don't know how to read and I don't know how to write. He goes, and you send these long emails and long Facebook posts, and I don't know what you're saying. And if I don't have a friend who can read it to me, I can't respond to you.
Oh, Tracey.
And he said, I didn't know how to tell you. And I said, oh my goodness. I said, Michael, all right.
Wow.
I'm going to come up to the Upper West Side. We're going to sit down and have coffee. Give me 2 hours of your time. So I said to him, I said, Michael, look, you've got this great life. I've read about you, and then I'm sure there's stuff that I don't know that you'll tell me through interviews. But I'm going to try to set you up with a literacy program for adults, people who, for whatever reason, stopped learning how to read and who are your age or who are in your situation. And I'm going to get you in a program. I said, but the only way I will finish this film is if you stick with the program. Now, I'm not saying you have to get, a high school diploma and go off to an Ivy. Right. That's not what I'm saying. Just achieve literacy. Be able to read, be able to pick up the newspaper, because he knows everybody in the neighborhood and he's constantly on Facebook, but he can't read any posts. And he would tell me, ladies will give me their phone number and write things down. I can read the number, but they'll write things down. I don't know what they've said. I said,
Amazing.
Don't you want to be able to go out on dates and
exactly follow through on these women who are interested in you?
Exactly. Look what you're missing out on. Or even the menu. I said, how do you read a menu? He said, he goes, I make sure I go to restaurants that have hamburgers. He goes, he said to me, what's usually on the menu of an American restaurant? I go, I don't know. Hamburger. He goes, hamburgers. Exactly. He said, so I go into a restaurant and I'll say, well, sweetie, you order what you want to order. I'm just going to have a hamburger and a Coke. He said, because that's usually on the menu.
Oh, Tracey.
So long story short, I found, it's called Literacy Partners. That was the second one. The first one was the Brooklyn Library. They have an adult literacy program. And the woman, her name is Winsome Cortez, was wonderful. But we had a problem where Michael it was tough. It was tough for him to be in these classes, and that didn't work. So I took him out of the Brooklyn Library program, and I'm like, I'm not giving up. So I found Literacy Partners, which is a place down in Wall Street, and they do the same type of thing, and it's structured a little bit differently, and they really understood his problem, and they tried to work with him. But again, it just didn't work.
Yeah.
So I wanted to make a feature of it because Mark Breland was a friend of his, because Michael used to be a boxer for the USA boxing team, and this man had a great life, but he threw it away by selling drugs and going to jail, and also not knowing how to read. So this is a short documentary about that.
And the name of the documentary
is called Dominguez versus Dominguez, because who is his worst opponent? Himself.
Wow. And it really is like from boxing to literacy.
Right.
What a powerful story. And that's already completed?
I just finished that during the Christmas season. I mean, I put it together and I'm like, this is pretty good. It's a short, it's not a feature doc. Yeah. So that's done. So.
And the story of Michael, is he stuck with some kind of tutoring or help?
Actually, I spoke to him on the phone 2 days ago to tell him about this, and he said, you don't know what this has done for my life. He goes, if there's anything that happened, I'm trying to learn how to read, and you really expose me, but I'm glad you did expose me.
Okay.
So expose my, this secret I kept I'm 61 and I couldn't read. So he's aware of the film, and he's happy with it, and he's happy that we're doing it. And,
beautiful story. Beautiful story. It's amazing how we can be our own worst enemy.
And he was, or
and
is.
He was. And maybe you've given him permission not to be.
Yeah.
Tracey, this is your career we've talked about, and this career in just in a 5-year period of time of all this growth and all this creativity and human stories that you've been able to capture. This is really exciting. It sounds like you've had a 30-year career as a filmmaker, and you're talking about 5 years. I have to remind myself from what you've just talked
Sometimes
about.
it feels like it's 30 years. When you're in the middle of trying to get
It's intense. It's intense.
But I love it. And there are times where I'm like, well, I wish I had figured this out sooner, but maybe it wouldn't have,
it may not have been as rich because
Right.
you've had all this other life experience. And so you're doing it now because you want to, and there's
Right.
a drive in you. Tell me about your personal life. You've got 2 children?
Yep, I have a girl, a daughter, and a son. My daughter she's going to be 20 in March, and my son's going to be 22.
Wow.
And they're great. Totally, really different personalities. They're both born in March, but they're really not the same. She's not quite sure. She's in mass communications, and she thinks she wants to go into the PR business. She thinks, under that umbrella of PR somewhere. Whereas my son is at Drexel University, and his major is, he's corrected me, I used to call it sports management. It's sport management.
Oh, not with an S on it.
Not with an S. He said, stop calling. I'm like, okay, doesn't make sense, but okay.
He's a good sport.
Right. He wants to ultimately become an agent for, like, say, European soccer teams. He loves soccer, even though he's a great tennis player. The kids can play golf. But never, all those lessons just went out the window because all he really wants to do is watch soccer.
Well, maybe it didn't go out the window again.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. So he's at Drexel, and it's great because they're on the co-op system where you go to school for 2 terms or 1 term, and then for 6 months you have to do what they're called 3 co-ops of 6 months where you have to work in your major. So last summer he worked for the Washington Nationals at their baseball academy. And so now he's trying to secure his his second co-op. And then you end up with a resume of 18 months of full, work experience in your area.
It's like previous generations where we had an apprentice.
Right.
Like really getting your hands in, and it's not just theoretical classroom learning, but
Right.
experiential. That's great. Usually I ask my guests as we're kind of wrapping it up, what inspires you? What uplifts you? What nourishes you or kind of fills your tank when you're working so hard?
I'd say 2 things. Outside of just being with my kids, and I know that sounds trite and it sounds corny, but it's
not.
it just rejuvenates me to be with my kids. And until the dishes are piled in the sink and no one's putting them in the dishwasher because that little genie who I think lives in our house,
The maid,
that maid,
the genie maid.
like, oh, she's not here this week. Where's the maid? But the 2 things are being able to run. I'm not as much of a runner as I used to be, and travel. And I'm noticing more and more. I mean, we travel a lot because of these film festivals and my films. But like I was saying to Peter, what I'm starting to notice is even though we get to go to wonderful places, Dubai and France, it's still not a vacation.
Right.
Because
You're still working.
You're still working. And so for the past couple of years, we've had a lot of vacations where it was like, oh, yeah, we were here, we were there. But we never really said, okay, these 10 days, we're just going on vacation to this place.
Just to be there.
Just to be there. And I can tell when I don't get to go there. It doesn't have to be France. Even though I love France and we spend a lot of time there, but it could be, let's just take off and go to, somewhere in Texas or I don't know, just to get out of Brooklyn, get away from our little neighborhood and go on a vacation. I start to lose something, and it takes something away from my editing. It takes my vision of what I want to do for my next film.
Yes.
So traveling and running. If I can't get out there and exercise and run, you don't want to be around me.
Wow.
So those are the 2 things that really rejuvenate me, that give me that inspiration I need to just keep going.
Beautiful. It sounds like the running is really nourishing your body, and keeping you fit and with vitality. But it sounds like the traveling just nourishes your mind and your spirit and exposes you to beauty and cultures and people in a way where you can just absorb and take it all in.
Yep, that's it.
Beautiful, beautiful. It's been a pleasure to have you with me today, and I am so excited to watch all your other movies, and I hope our listeners will have all links for your website and social media on the show notes so people can access your great work.
Well, thank you for having me. It was my pleasure.
Thank you. Namaste.
Namaste.
From Mama A.
Open up your heart, quiet down your mind. Take a long, deep breath into your consciousness. Let it take control this time. Listen to your soul inside. Sing, I wanna be light, wanna radiate light, shine my light on you. Don't you wanna be light, wanna radiate light, shine your light on me too. Let it take control this time. Listen to your soul inside. Sing, I wanna be light, wanna radiate light, shine my light on you. Don't you wanna be light, wanna radiate light, shine your light on me too. Won't you shine your light on me?